Hello again, students! The end is really near. How are you guys doing? Are you ready to take another leap and open another door of knowledge? Well, without further ado, let's start the discussion with the topic of major categories of biomolecules.
Biomolecules are various substances that are delivered by cells and living organic entities. The four major categories of biomolecules are carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acid, and proteins. The presence of biomolecule, like starch in food, can be tested using iodine solution, and presence of fat using grease spot test on a paper. Well, we have different food preferences, but food is a source of large molecules that are needed for life called biomolecules. There are four biomolecules that can make up of life, and this will be the focus of the video. But before we get into the detail about four biomolecules, we need to talk about one very important vocabulary word, the word monomer. A monomer is a building block. If I had some large substance, the parts that make up the substance are called monomers, or just like building blocks.
We're going to talk a lot about monomers today because we need to understand what the biomolecules are made of. And we need to understand biomolecules because they are building components of life. So let's introduce the four biomolecules and talk a little bit about their functions. We'll start with carbohydrates. Carbs. Well, carbs are something you have probably heard about when people are talking about diets. You know, they try to go low carb or maybe they want a lot of carbs. Diets always come and go. Pasta and breads are examples of foods heavy in carbohydrates. Carbs are also a very important source of energy. In fact, that's one big function of carbs. They are a great fast source of energy. If you are a marathon runner, you might want to eat a lot of carbs the night before a race. Lots of marathon runners do this. It's called pasta loading. They eat a big pasta dinner the night before they go on a marathon.
Now carbs have a monomer. Again, remember, monomers are building blocks. The monomer for a carb is called monosaccharides. I know, that's a big mouthful, but monosaccharides make up carbohydrates. A diverse group known as lipids. Lipids are better known as fats. They have two different types of building blocks. One type of building block is called a fatty acid, and the other type is called glycerol.
Now, examples of lipids include butter, oil, and cholesterol. They have a lot of great functions. You may think that's fat. How good can fat be? Well, it just depends when you put it in context. For example, you know those really adorable seals that you see on calendars? They have this fluffy white hair. They are actually called a harp seal. Well, they actually only look like that when they are babies. When they get older, they are not quite as cute. But in their little baby stage, they actually have a lot of this hair that they are born with that helps them keep warm. But over time, they have to develop blubber. It's fat and it helps them warm. Lipids are great for insulation. Also, you might not think about fats as being related to energy. But fats are a great source of long-term energy. They can store energy for a long time.
Say, for example, you wanted to swim in the English Channel. That's like 21 miles of swimming. The fastest swimmers might be able to do that in 7 or 8 hours. But it might take a lot longer than the average swimmer, more like 25 hours, and that's a lot of swimming. Well, you would want to make sure that your body has enough lipids, enough stored fat that you can pull upon. Because after you burn off those carbohydrates, remember, carbohydrates are the fastest source of energy. You might not have enough stored energy unless you have lipids on hand.
Lipids also make up cell membranes, so they are important for life because all living things are made up of cells. Of course, an excessive amount of lipids could be a bad thing for your health. Remember, it's all about moderation.
Okay, next, proteins. When you hear about proteins, a lot of times you might think of power bars. They say they have a lot of proteins in them and that they help with muscle building. Well, Protein is great for muscle building. Examples of food that are high in proteins include meats and many types of
The monomers of protein are amino acids. So sometimes you see these labels that say, this has 20 amino acids in this food. Really, they are just trying to say that it has protein. And proteins are made up of amino acids. So that's just some funny advertising for you. But in addition to it being important to muscle development, protein is also very important in other functions such as working in the immune system and acting as enzymes. Remember, enzymes are made of proteins, so proteins are important for the body. Now, when we start talking about genes, the DNA genes, not the genes you wear. The DNA codes for proteins that are very important for structure and function in the body.
The last big biomolecule is known as nucleic acid. Nucleic acids include DNA and RNA. They have a monomer called nucleotide. That's going to be easy for you to remember because nucleotides sounds a lot like nucleic acid.
If considering DNA and RNA, both of these are involved in genetic information for the coding of your traits. They are found in a lot of your food because whenever you eat something that came from something once living, it can still contain the DNA.
Plants and animals both have DNA. In fact, any type of life must contain a nucleic acid, like DNA to direct to the cell's activities. So, we just empower through introducing 4 biomolecules by providing examples, exploring their monomers, and giving some general function. One last very important part to mention is the structure of these biomolecules. Understanding the structure can help predicting their properties and easily be able to identify them.
Then remember this mnemonic device that goes with these 4 biomolecules. CHO, CHO, CHON, CHON. Instead of chomp at the end with an M, it's chomp with an N. The C stands for carbon, the H stands for hydrogen, the O for oxygen. So carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids all have that CHO in there. It's just proteins and nucleic acids also have an N, which is nitrogen, and nucleic acid additionally have a P, which is for phosphorus. So again, CHO, CHO, CHON, CHON, the major elements in the 4 biomolecules.
Well, that's it for this video, and we remind you to stay curious. This will be our last video for this school year, and I hope you learned a lot in that time. Once again, I'm Mariela R. de la Cruz with my team members Ellery Rose Batok, Andaisel Kumarat, and Angeline De Vera, ending this presentation.